Alright, so I just finished up the Exorcist franchise and talked about every one of them on my channel, so check those out if you haven't. And today I'm going to rank the franchise, all 5 films, excluding the TV show because I have not seen that yet. So, going straight into it, I disliked both of the prequel movies that they made. So, I'd say out of the two, Exorcist the Beginning would be my number 5. Out of these 5 films would be my least favorite. Exorcist the Beginning, starring Stellan Skarsgård as Father Merrin, who encounters the demon before the Exorcist movie. There's nothing else I can say about this movie except that it is just dull, so unentertaining and boring, and there's silly moments in it that are kind of over the top, but in a way where they're not fun. And this is really a downer. This movie, The Exorcist the Beginning, I think is pretty bad. There's nothing really a note that I could give it besides the fact that it's just so forgettable and so dull and so uninteresting. And Rennie Harlan directed it, so there's some silly moments, but it doesn't give any fun to it. It's just dumb. Like, it's a dumb movie. Exorcist the Beginning would be my number 5. And these two number 4 and 5 in my ranking, I'm not going to talk much about because there's nothing else to say about them. So my number 4 would be Exorcist, or Dominion, prequel to The Exorcist, which is the second prequel, which is the original intent that they were going to make, but they put out Exorcist the Beginning first. So we've got this weird mishmash of these two, Stellan Skarsgård as Father Merrin, Exorcist movies that are not connected to each other, that are alternate stories. And this one is a tad bit better than the beginning. This one has, at least it's filmed in a way where it looks like the first Exorcist, and at least it's not as silly and over the top, even except until you get to the end where the ending is really silly. But besides that, this, again, is a dull movie, a dull, forgettable movie, just like the last one. So, that's my number 4. Now, my number 3 would be The Exorcist 3. Now, here we go with controversy. I loved Exorcist 3 so much. I honestly love the first 3 movies so immensely. And this one I think is incredible in a lot of ways. I think that this really is a moving movie, like, if it makes sense, with these characters, with George C. Scott as Kinderman. He is really incredible, and George C. Scott is great in anything, but he blows me away in this movie. Brad Dourif blows me away as Patient X, this character who Brad Dourif plays fantastically. Brad Dourif, and it's so weird to say, but Brad Dourif is great at playing a killer or a creep. Like, he is fantastic in this movie, and it sounds like I'm insulting Brad Dourif, but I'm not. Please don't, Brad Dourif, if you ever see this, which I don't think you ever will. But don't insult, or I'm not trying to insult you. But he is fantastic in this movie. Both of those characters are incredible, and this movie has one of the best jump scares I have ever seen in any movie ever, any horror movie. The scene where the nurse is walking around in the hospital for like a 5-minute scene. She's just walking around, and then by the end it zooms in where she walks far along on the from the camera from the very front. She walks and then the camera zooms in on her while somebody is walking right behind her with hedge trimmers. Like, that is one of the scariest jump scares I've ever seen. It blows me away. It's truly scary as a scary movie. It's really intense. These characters are fantastic. So I love 3. Now, here we go with big controversy. God, I just said that wrong. Whatever. I'll keep it in here. I don't know how to edit stuff. Now, my number 2, funny enough, would be Exorcist 2: The Heretic. Now, stay with me. Don't leave my video, please. Let me explain. I'm not saying you have to agree with me, because everybody in the world now with opinions on movies is like, you got to agree with me or I hate you, or you're stupid because you don't agree with me. I'm not saying that. I feel like people should like what they like. It doesn't matter. Exorcist 2 I love. This is just such an incredible, weird movie. This movie to me feels like a crazy dream, if that makes sense. It really is directed in such an interesting, fascinating, unique way that it's really unforgettable. And I know people hate it. I know people think it's awful. But I don't care. I love this movie. I thought that this really blew me away, just how interesting this movie is and how unique it is. And I loved all the characters too, even though they do have silly acting moments. I loved all these characters. I loved Reagan again. I love seeing um, Lamont and seeing Marin back, and like Jean, Tuscan, and Sharon. Like they're all great in this movie. And this movie has one of my favorite scores ever by Ennio Morricone, who is one of the best music composers ever. But like, because anything I hear that he does, I just am immediately floored and love any. And I haven't even heard half of his stuff because he's done like over 500 movies, like in terms of like composing. So it's just his score in this is incredible. Reagan's theme is one of my absolute favorite themes of all time. It was also even used briefly in The Hateful Eight, which shows how good this score is, whether this movie is loved or not. And it's not loved, but I don't care. I root for the underdog. I root for this movie because I think it's so funny, it's so unique. It's like a crazy dream. These characters are all interesting. This is such an interesting second story. I liked how they connect with the first one, where they have Reagan kind of becoming possessed again, but because the demon Pazuzu is wanting to brush the wings of like the good locust, which means in this sense like the good people who have these gifts of the world, like Reagan, who suddenly gets this gift of like being able to get this little girl to talk who is mute. I just love moments like that, and that scene with her is silly, but it's incredible, where like she's talking to that little girl and she helps her speak, and it's actually really moving, even though it's silly at the same time because of that line where she's like, yeah, I was possessed by a demon, don't worry, it's gone though, which is silly, but I don't care. This is such a fun, interesting, entertaining, unique movie, and I love it. I feel like this should at least get the fact that this has an incredible score, incredible cinematography. It has stuff that is truly unique and incredible, but unique doesn't equal good in a lot of people's eyes, and I don't care. I love this movie regardless of that. I think this is incredible. And my number one is obviously the first one, but honestly the first three movies I could rank them equally because I love things all about all three of the first ones. This one is just an incredibly moving story. The first Exorcist, about these characters overcoming evil, and I loved how this is just such an incredibly well written movie. These characters, and William Peter Blatty wrote the book, so I think he directed the movie. Yeah, he directed the movie obviously too, because he directed this one and the third one, and he does an incredible job here. And because he's a writer, you can tell how great this movie is in terms of like how these characters are characterized. Like they've all got things about them that make these characters interesting, and the performances are incredible as well. This is just the first possession movie and has never been replicated to be as good as this one, so that's why it's my number one, because it's just so incredible, and these characters are so fun, the writing is so great, there's scary moments that still hold up to me. I think there are some great moments, like that moment where Reagan is in the hospital being tested, and it shows her just having a blank stare, and then it shows in blackness that demon's face, that 1 second on screen, and I think it's only in the cut they released later where they added in that scene of Sharon walking, or I mean not Sharon, Chris walking into the house, and like the demon's face is on something in the background. I don't know if that was in the theatrical cut or if they made it later on that new cut. But the demon scenes with the demon are scary, and this is just disturbing in a lot of ways. And in a lot of ways, it holds up incredibly well. And I can see why people were scared to death whenever they saw this in the theater and threw up in the theater, because it was the first of its kind. We are so desensitized now because this is a movie that's been done millions of times over and over again. So it kind of loses its value in a way, but it's so unfortunate because I feel like this is the best one I've seen of an exorcism movie, of course. And I just love this movie, and I love these characters, love the thrill, love how unique it is, love the fighting it's good and evil with everybody. Everybody is confronted by this demon and are tortured by this demon, and it feels so warranted whenever they fight him off at the end and finally defeat it. All of these characters, Marin, Karis, Chris, and Reagan are all tormented, and Reagan's the one possessed. They are all tormented against this demon, and whenever the demon is defeated by the end, it's a bittersweet note whenever Karis takes the demon into him and jumps out the window and kills himself, like to sacrifice himself for Reagan, which he had a horrible thing with his mother dying, and then having this horrible story where like he lost everything and then he died at the end, which is so sad. So you feel so much for these characters as well. It's just a fantastic movie in every right it can be. So I love The Exorcist 1. It's just so incredible. But again, I love the first 3 movies so well. And honestly, if I could just say my rankings again, it's just like the first 2 prequels are my least favorite. They're not good. They're not interesting. They're boring. And then the first 3 Exorcist movies, the trilogy, is incredible. I love all 3 of them. And I know people hate 2, but I love all 3 of these films. So that's my ranking of the Exorcist franchise. What's yours? So thank you guys so much for watching. Comment, share, subscribe if you like to, and thanks so much for watching.